The grand boardroom gleamed under crystal chandeliers as executives prepared to finalize a staggering $550 million international contract. Cameras waited in the hall, journalists ready to declare it the deal of the decade. Everyone believed success was inevitable, until a quiet, unexpected voice shattered the illusion. Moments before the pens touched the paper, the maid's young daughter stepped forward, trembling yet determined. Her words would expose a deception so deep it could have bankrupted an entire corporation and ruined hundreds of lives. In that charged silence, every face turned toward her, some with disbelief, others with dread, unaware that this child's revelation would rip the mask off a well-crafted lie. Weeks earlier, the story began far from the grandeur of boardrooms, in the back corridors, of a luxury hotel in Dubai. The hotel had been selected as neutral ground for negotiations between a North American energy firm and an influential Middle Eastern investment group. The deal promised vast infrastructure improvements and jobs across 2 continents, but also drew scrutiny for its speed and secrecy. Among the hotel staff was a hard-working single mother, assigned as part-time housekeeping for the suites reserved by the investment team. Her daughter, just 12, often waited quietly in staff areas while her mother worked. The girl was curious, observant, and wise beyond her years. She often watched from corners as interpreters whispered into headsets, lawyers shuffled through thick folders, and dignitaries discussed terms that would decide the future of entire regions. Most people barely noticed her presence, except one man, the foreign consultant who led negotiations on behalf of the investment group. His charisma made him the face of the deal, but his quiet smirk and dismissive treatment of staff hinted at another side. Unknown to everyone in the glittering conference room, the maid's daughter began noticing inconsistencies, phrases in Arabic that weren't translated accurately into English, subtle references to hidden fees and land use clauses. She didn't understand all the jargon, but her sharp memory caught the differences in tone. Something about the consultant's polished assurances felt rehearsed, too perfect. As the date of the final signing approached, the girl sensed that the optimism, celebrated in headlines, hid a darker reality, one that could cost not only money, but also dignity for those trusting the promises. The energy company's board had sent a diverse team of executives and advisors. They relied heavily on interpreters and the consultant's translations for the Arabic portions of the deal. The public saw the partnership as a beacon of global cooperation, but behind closed doors, negotiations grew tense. Minor disagreements about environmental standards and profit sharing were downplayed in press releases. The consultant positioned himself as indispensable, bridging the cultural and linguistic gap, assuring both sides that all concerns were addressed. He insisted that delays would cost millions each day and pressured everyone to sign as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the maid's daughter continued to observe from the edges of rooms while helping her mother tidy up after late-night meetings. She overheard private phone calls in which the consultant used a very different tone, cynical, even mocking. He boasted about how easy it was to make one side believe they were receiving fair treatment, while clauses in Arabic told another story. One evening, she noticed a document left carelessly on a side table. It contained a section of the contract written entirely in Arabic, outlining a contingency fee that would redirect hundreds of millions into a private holding company, effectively diverting resources meant for development projects. When she tried to tell her mother, the woman dismissed it, fearing for her job. The girl's growing unease turned to resolve when she overheard the consultant bragging to a colleague over dinner about sealing the trap before the foreigners caught on. She pieced together that the real victims would be the very communities the investment was supposed to uplift. On the day of the signing, dignitaries, executives, and media filled the hotel's grand ballroom. Flashbulbs popped as photographers prepared to capture the historic moment. The girl stood quietly behind a column, clutching her hands, heart pounding as she weighed the risk of speaking up. No one had invited her into that room, but she felt an unshakable sense that remaining silent would make her complicit in the harm about to be done. The atmosphere in the ballroom was electric as both sides prepared to sign. The consultant stood at the head of the table, smiling confidently as he guided dignitaries to their seats. Reporters whispered into their microphones, narrating history in the making. Just as the CEO of the energy company lifted his pen, a small, trembling voice rang out from the back of the room. The unexpected interruption caused a ripple of confusion. Security moved instinctively, but the Middle Eastern financier raised his hand to stop them. Curious about the child's boldness, the girl stepped forward, voice shaking but clear, recounting what she had overheard, the mistranslations, the secret fees, the mocking conversations. Gasps echoed across the room as she revealed specific terms in Arabic that contradicted what had been publicly presented. For a moment, the consultant tried to laugh it off, dismissing her as a misguided child. But one of the bilingual aides, intrigued and unsettled, quickly cross-checked the contract. His expression turned grave as he confirmed the girl's claims. The room fell into stunned silence. Cameras captured the moment the signing ceremony collapsed into chaos. The energy company's CEO demanded an immediate halt, and the financiers turned on the consultant, enraged at being implicated in a scheme that could tarnish their reputation. In that instant, the balance of power shifted, not because of wealth or political influence, but because a child had spoken truth when others stayed silent. Investigations launched within days exposed the full extent of the deception. The consultant was arrested on charges of fraud and embezzlement, and both parties to the negotiation distanced themselves from him. The deal was renegotiated under far stricter oversight, ensuring that promised funds went directly to the intended infrastructure projects. The maid, once fearful for her job, was publicly commended for raising a child with such courage and integrity. Media outlets around the world covered the story, framing it as a remarkable example of how truth can surface from the most unexpected sources. For the young girl, the experience was both empowering and sobering. She had witnessed firsthand how prejudice against those seen as less educated, too young, or just staff can allow injustice to flourish. Her actions reminded leaders that sometimes those who seem least powerful see the truth most clearly. Viewers and citizens alike reflected on how close the world had come to applauding a historic agreement that would have concealed exploitation. The story sparked conversations about transparency, ethical translation in international deals, and the importance of including diverse voices, even those often overlooked, in critical decision-making spaces. As one commentator put it, the incident was proof that courage has no age and that vigilance must never be outsourced entirely to authority. The girl's intervention saved not just money, but also the trust of communities depending on the promised development. It leaves us with a haunting yet necessary question. How many other injustices persist simply because the people who notice them feel too small to speak up? And how much could change if more of us found the courage to raise our voices, even when the room seems too grand for us to belong?